Welcome to the ArmaniTalks YouTube channel. I'm your host, ArmaniTalks. In this channel, I'm helping you level up your communication skills. And on this episode, we're going to be talking about how to supercharge our learning with the interleaving method. Interleaving? Wait a minute. That seems like an extremely scary word. I don't know if I want to keep on watching. It seems scary, but overall, the definition is very simple. Interleaving is when we are cross-combining multiple subjects, meaning that we're learning multiple subjects at once. Multiple subjects at once. Something about that doesn't feel right. I know why it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right because it gives the feeling of multitasking. And anytime we're delving into the world of productivity, into the world of the mind, multitasking is a very sinister word. We look down on it. But that's a little misguided. Multitasking on an extremely micro sense is bad, but multitasking on a macro sense, a big sense, is rather strategic, and it leads to more creativity. What do I mean by this? Well, right now, I'm recording a YouTube video on my phone. Let's say as I'm recording the video, I start responding back to a text on my phone. That's me multitasking on an extremely micro level. But let's say once I'm done recording this YouTube video, then I start, let's say, recording a podcast on my phone. This is giving me more data points in a very unique way. This is me multitasking on a macro level. Therefore, multitasking is not always something that's considered bad. We just always have to focus on the context. Now, with that being said, let me ask you something. Biology, psychology, and math. When you think of these three subjects, do you view them as separate islands which have nothing in relationship with one another? Or do you view it more like a web, where there's a chance for a lot of connections to be made? If you view it like an island, which each three subject, they're all separate, there's no connections, then that's a very old school paradigm, and that's going to make learning feel impossible, especially nowadays where there's so much information. But if you could at least be open-minded enough to accept that these three separate subjects are more like a web, then this molds the mind to introduce the faculties of interleaving learning into this world. Let me tell you a funny little story that's going to exemplify what interleaving learning really means. Back in high school, I used to have three teachers who despised one another. These three teachers would always gossip about one another. I found this extremely weird. Why did you find it weird? I found it weird because these three teachers were extremely similar. Similar how? Similar in the context where they were all very overweight, and all three of them were delving into diets to lose that weight. You would think that these three individuals would be, I don't know, getting a group chat together, collaborating with one another, sharing diet tips, motivating one another. But that's not what they did. What they did was gossip about one another, tear each other down, and they would always imply to us, the class, that the other person was cheating. And here's where they took it even a level further. They took it a level further by not only insulting each of these individuals' character, but they were also insulting each of these individuals' classes, the subjects that they taught. So just to give you an example, one of the individuals, one of these special three, was named Mr. Brewer, and he was my history teacher. And the other one was a guy named Dr. Anson, and he was my psychology teacher. Dr. Anson would always make fun of Mr. Brewer, and he'd always make fun of history. He's like, yeah, what could you learn about history? History's not that good. And Mr. Brewer would always make fun of Dr. Anson. He's like, psychology? That's not even a real subject. Just back and forth, insulting one another. Now, with the learning mindset, what they were doing with these subjects was that they were treating it like individual islands, very separate from one another. But just imagine if not only did they work together in terms of their weight loss journey, but they worked together in cross combining these different subjects. How cool would it be if Mr. Brewer was able to teach history by incorporating elements of psychology that he was able to learn from Dr. Anson? How cool would it be? Him teaching us about Genghis Khan, talking about the psychology of Alexander the Great. I mean, that would be mind blowing. I would have truly understood history rather than being like that all the time. Now, on the flip side, let's say Dr. Anson was incorporating a little bit of history into psychology. Not only do we understand like the ego, the id, the subconscious mind, we understood the history of psychology. We understood how it came into existence, and he is now incorporating the insights from Mr. Brewer. How cool would that have been? And how much deeper would the learning experience have been? Much deeper. So in the 21st century, learning in terms of islands is very much over, yet a lot of people are finding it difficult to adjust because, let's face it, in school and in a lot of formal education, we have a curriculum that compartmentalizes different subjects, which compartmentalizes grooves in our brain, which low-key makes it a little bit more difficult to learn on an interleaving level. So how can we incorporate this interleaving mindset into our lives? A few tricks and tips that I recommend. I recommend you don't just read one book at a time. Meaning, let's say in a week, you normally finish one book from beginning to end. I recommend that if you want to delve into interleaving method, this is just a suggestion, you read two books. One book is, let's say you read it in the morning, you read like 5-10 pages. It's from book A. And at night, let's say you read another book, book B, for your night routine, something like that. This just naturally gets your brain in the habit of multitasking in a new way. Okay, it just gets it thinking a little differently. Another example is an example from Marshall McLuhan, who is this famous media theorist from the 1960s. This is extremely extreme, by the way, but this is something cool that he did, and he was known to be an extremely creative fellow. What he would do was, for a certain book, he would only read one side of the book. He would just read all the right pages, and he'd ignore the left pages, and he would let his brain fill in the gaps. This is an extremely advanced move, by the way. This is one of those advanced moves if you truly want to exercise your creativity. But this really gets you thinking differently. Okay, so this is another way to gradually get into the habit of interleaving learning. Another method, which is something that I believe anyone can incorporate, is going down rabbit holes where anytime you're learning a new subject, nowadays, if you're learning it on new media, let's say you're reading a blog, there's always hyperlinks in it. Get into the habit of clicking the hyperlinks and learning about that link that you just clicked as well. So let's say once you're done with this, you pull up an article on interleaving learning. That interleaving article is going to have a lot of different hyperlinks that can take you into a brand new territory. This gets the brain into the habit of learning about multiple different subjects. Overall, this can be done in a multitude of ways, but if it's being gradually incorporated, eventually what happens is that the brain builds multiple different in-depth networks, and it's able to cross-combine multiple different topics. It's able to cross-combine the world of psychology with the world of history, with the world of math, with the world of fashion. I don't know. You could just keep going deeper and deeper. And this leads to a supercharged learning experience. And to take it even further, getting into the habit of explaining it further ingrains these neural circuits. So overall, communication skills is just an expression of what we know on a very deep level. Not stuff that we just memorized, but stuff that we truly know on a very, very deep level where it's difficult to explain it in a complex way. It becomes extremely complex when we don't really know it. But when we know it, it's when interleaving learning is being activated. The funny thing about the brain is that the brain normally acts like it likes just the boring routines. It acts like that. It's like, give me the boring routines. But if you shock it every now and then, you switch it up, the brain is kind of like, no, don't do that. But Loki is like, do it again. No, don't do that. Do it again. And this whole process of, no, don't do it, do that, do it again, do it again, do it again, deepens the neural circuits in a combination of ways. And that's when island mentality slowly starts to dissolve and the web mentality is starting to get picked up in our mind. So interleaving learning is a super skill set in the 21st century, and it's one of the most fantastic ways in order to build your creativity. If you want more practical insights like this into the world of mindset and communication skills, be sure to check out my free daily newsletter, which goes out every single day at 7 p.m. EST. To join the tribe, check out the link in the description box right on below and level up your learning/communication skills. Thank you for joining the ArmaniTalks YouTube channel, and I'll catch you on the next episode.